Thanks to the Americans for Responsible Solutions for bringing this together. I want to thank the panelists for allowing me to interrupt them, intervene for just a moment. Harold Pollack, thank you, University of Chicago. And my friend Cleo Colley-Pendleton. She is a friend. Politicians throw that around a lot, but we've visited together in her home. We've been at a lot of press conferences together. It breaks my heart to think of the tragedy that brought us together.
Yeah.
But in your daughter's name, you have really done some important things in Chicago and even beyond, nationwide. So thank you for keeping Haidia's memory alive and doing something about her tragic and senseless death. A few months ago, I joined Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and Senator Mark Kirk of my state in introducing a bill that carries Haidia's name. It will create a tough new federal crime to crack down on gun trafficking and straw purchasing, which we were just hearing about. Make no mistake, these are the two pipelines when it comes to major pipelines when it comes to illegal guns in many communities, such as Chicago. It's how the gangs and criminals get their guns. In Chicago, experts have used gun tracing information to track how crime guns are getting into the state. For example, between 2009 and 2013, we saw that 19% of Chicago's crime guns originated in Indiana, 7% Mississippi. And the reason, of course, is right across the border in Indiana are gun shows where there are no background checks. And literally, you will have young people driving up, filling the trunks of their cars with ammunition and firearms from these gun shows, and then taking them across the border into Illinois. In the highest crime sections of the city of Chicago, it isn't 19% from Indiana, it's 40%. 40% of the crime guns coming across that border. So when you hear this thing about, don't tell me about gun violence, Chicago has some of the toughest gun laws in the country, and look what's going on there. Well, it isn't Chicago when it comes to 40% of the sources. It turns out to be the suburbs, we know that, Cleo, and it turns out to be states like Indiana and Mississippi, for goodness sakes. The current federal laws on the books don't specifically prohibit gun trafficking or straw purchasing, and prosecutors have to use other laws many times to try to bring these people to justice, like paperwork violations. And that's why very few federal prosecutors jump into this level of prosecution. So the criticism, well, you don't even enforce the laws in the books. Some of them are virtually worthless when you consider the outcomes most likely and the time involved in preparing them. So we need to strengthen our laws. I want to talk for a minute about crime gun tracing. I'm glad the officer is here from Maryland, because I can tell you that this has become something that's critically important, and I've worked with ATF on it. It's not only the guns that we can trace, but it's also the shell casings. We end up, by collecting these shell casings at the scene and piecing together bits of information and evidence linking crimes. I was born and raised in East St. Louis, Illinois, 300 miles away from the city of Chicago. I was at the ATF where they had swooped up the casings from a recent crime scene where a murder was committed, and with those casings were able to link it to a murder in East St. Louis, Illinois, 300 miles away that had happened 2 years ago. So now they're trying to trace this gun. How did it move? How did it make it from way down there in southern Illinois all the way up to Chicago, and who were the people that were pushing this gun into these crime situations? I've been calling for year after year on every law enforcement agency in Illinois and literally across the nation to trace all of their crime guns. It's free. Any police department, any sheriff in my state, if they can find any identifying characteristics or serial numbers on those guns, can trace them through our state police at no expense whatsoever, creating a data bank of information, which allows us to really pursue criminals and to solve crimes. Well, how far have we come? We have 800 law enforcement agencies in Illinois, 800 of them, 450 are participating. It should be 800. Some of them are too small, may not even be securing crime guns, but there's no excuse. It costs nothing, and it is part of the network of information that can make a difference. Now, I've been trying to push this. I asked ATF to give me a list of all the law enforcement agencies in America that are signed on to use E-Trace as well as the Durbin system where they track the casings. Well, it turns out yesterday they did it. So they've given me a list for every state in the union, and it will tell us how many are actively participating in crime gun and these casing tracings. And that, to me, is good information. What I'm going to do is make it available to every one of my colleagues in the Senate. If they believe, as I do, that this is one of the easiest ways to pursue crime and criminals who are using guns, and to do it in a forensic, thoughtful approach, then they need to do what I've done, and that is press conferences, letters to these law enforcement agencies, meeting with the chiefs of police, the sheriff's organizations, and the rest, saying, why aren't you doing this? It's that subtle persuasion that eventually can make a difference. So I'm going to take this national information and try to use it to persuade my colleagues to join me in this effort. Every day, as we know, 297 Americans are shot, 89 of them fatally. We can do something about it. We had 58 votes in the Senate a couple of years ago in support of a gun trafficking bill. I see Kirsten Gillibrand coming in here. Kirsten, been a great advocate and a great friend on this. Every Democrat voted for it. Only 3 Republicans joined us. We came close to 60. We're going to go at it again. We're not going to quit. I hope that on a bipartisan basis we can do this when it comes to trafficking, straw purchasing, and gun tracing. There are a lot of things we'll never agree on. Let's be real honest about it. But let's try to focus on those things where we can build some bipartisan support, and these are going to be part of it. Thanks to the Americans for Responsible Solutions. Glad you're meeting here. Do not give up. Don't believe that because we have this epidemic of gun violence that we have to accept this as normal in America. When we reach the point that all we do is shrug our shoulders when we hear about the latest terrible tragedy involving a gun massacre, shame on us as a nation. We need to stand up and speak up, and I know that's what this organization is all about. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Senator. Really appreciate it.